pleasant good night, everyone. And I was told that I have 1 hour, and I've already been cautioned by Esmond. 1 hour. Um, so I go right into it. Welcome our online viewers. We are glad to have you streaming with us tonight. And I've been asked to share on the importance of staying unified in the midst of a crisis. And to execute this message, we would be camping in the book of Judges, Judges 20. And we'll start reading from verse 1. But before we go into Judges, I would like to lay some foundation to the message, because we are looking at the life of the Israelites, and this particular event started in Judges 19. But it will be a lot of reading, so I'll just lay some foundation. So the Israelites, Judges came right. Judges, the book of Judges is before the glorious settlement of the Israelites in the promised land. And we would want to believe that thereafter everything was going to be prosperous for the Israelites. But it really wasn't. And so Judges 19 introduces us to a guy. His name isn't known, but he's identified as a Levite. In those days, the Levites were the priestly tribe. They were the religious leaders of those times. And the Bible tells us that the Levite acquired a concubine. A concubine was a legal mistress. She shared in most of the duties as a wife, but did not share in the same privileges as a wife. But she was a legal mistress. And the Bible tells us that the Levite acquired a concubine, and she was unfaithful. Some translation says that she played the hoe. She was sexually unfaithful. And she eloped. So she left her husband, and she returned to her father's house. And after 4 months, the Levite decides to go after his runaway bride. And so he saddles his donkey, takes with him a servant, and he journeys to his father-in-law's house. When he gets there, he is heartily welcomed by his father-in-law. So much so that in Judges they tell us he is smothered with hospitality. So they're glad to see him, right? Good. So much so that he was detained 4 days in the house of his father-in-law. So every time he was ready to leave, he would extend courtesy. No, stay a night, stay another night. And so he was detained for 4 days in the house of his father-in-law. On the 5th day, the Levite decides it's time to return to Ephraim. That's where he's from. And so he leaves midday, and he leaves with his wife, his servant, and his donkeys. When he's on his way, obviously night is going to hit him, and he's going to require further hospitality to break the journey for the night. And so his servant suggested, listen, let's stay in Jebus, because they were already in the tongue of Jebus. But because Jebus was a heathen nation, the Levite decided it's not safe for me to stay here. Let me journey further. So he journeyed another 4 miles to the tongue of the Benjamites, because the Benjamites were Israelites. So he assumed that he would be safe among his kind. And so, as was the custom then, the Israelites would normally extend courtesies to sojourners. So the Levite sat in the town square with his concubine and his servant for a couple hours, and nobody extended hospitality to this Levite. And an old man who is not of the tribe of the Benjamites, he's not a local there in that town, he saw the weary travelers and extended hospitality. So he said, come to my house and I would ensure all your needs and met. And so he took them to his house and he took care of them. And then things took a turn for the worse. The meet and greet was interrupted by a loud pounding on the door. When the old man went to the door, he was greeted by a mob of Benjamite, the men from the tongue of Benjamin. And they asked for the old man to send out his 2 male guests so that they could know them. So we see in a repeat here of what happened in Sodom. So they wanted to know them. We all know what that means, right? Good. Right. And so the old man, because he feared God, he understood that such evil should not be done. And so he suggested that they take his virgin daughter, or even take the Levite's concubine. Eventually, the Levite's concubine was forced out to offer sexual hospitality to this mob. The Bible tells us, unlike Sodom and Gomorrah, God did not intervene this time. And so, the concubine was gang raped for the entire night and then abandoned on the doorstep of the old man. You're looking at me strange, like, seriously? That's in the Bible? Yeah, right. So, when daybreak, the Levite got up to continue his journey, and as he came out, he noticed his concubine, lifeless corpse, lying on the doorstep. And things got even more worse from here. So he saddled his donkey and he took his concubine with him back to Ephraim. When he got there, this Levite is now faced with a situation that has really challenged him both emotionally and spiritually. And so he gets back to his tongue and he dismembers her body in 12 pieces. And he sent it throughout the surrounding Israel to the 12 tribes. And even though this may sound like a very gruesome act, the Levite wanted to send a strong message. So, in other words, he wanted to mobilize the other Israelites so that they could avenge this wicked act. And that takes us to Judges 20. So we'll be reading now. I remember we're talking about the importance of remaining unified in the midst of a crisis. So the Levite has a crisis, and we want to look at now what was the response from the other tribes in the midst of his dilemma. And so we kind of be skip reading because this event covers like 3 or 4 chapters. So I'll kind of skip through for one at a time, right? So we are starting Judges 1, and it says, so all the children of Israel came out from Dan, we're reading verses 21. From Dan to Beersheba, as well as from the land of Gilead. And the congregation gathered together as one man before the Lord at Mizpah. And we jump into 11, and it says, so what happened there is they came together in verses 1, and the Levite was given the opportunity to present his case. Because remember, he just sent these dismembered parts. The Bible says he dismembered limb by limb, and he sent all these parts. So a gathering was called, and he was given the opportunity to present his case. And so from 1 go all the way to 11, he has presented his case. And in 11 it says, so all the men of Israel were gathered against the city united together as one man. So just to back up a bit, when the tribes received the body parts that was FedEx to them, they call a general assembly of all the tribes. So all the tribes gathered together except the Benjamites. And so word was sent to the Benjamites asking them to deliver up the men who had done who had committed such an atrocious act. So the other tribes were saying basically, we don't want to start a war, but this evil act must be punished. This must not be allowed to fester amongst us. And so they called a general assembly, and obviously the Benjamites didn't show up because they decided to remain in solidarity with the evildoers. And in the midst of the degeneracy that was taking place in Israel, because most people know in those days in the book of Judges, it said that, and each man did what was right in his own eyes. So in the midst of the degeneracy that was taking place, there was a righteous stratum. It's like a righteous conviction among the people. It's like this crime shocked the consciousness of the Israelites. So even though they were doing what was right in their own eyes, this crime in their eyes was not going to go unpunished. And so when the Benjamites refused to deliver up the unrighteous men, or as the Bible says, perverts, the Israelites took a vow. They took 3 vows, or they made 3 vows at that point in time. The first vow, they said, listen, none of us would return to our houses. It doesn't matter what happened in home. Nobody going back home. We would stay here, and we would fight, and we would avenge the honor of this Levite until we recover by the sword. That was the first vow. Nobody going home. The second vow, they said, whoever refuses today to fight against the Benjamites, they shall be killed by the sword. And the last vow, they said, peradventure, any of these men should survive this war, we would never allow them to marry our daughters. That's the 3 vows there, right? And now we go into 18 to chapter 18, and I'll be reading a few because this is where, verse 18. And it says, then the children of Israel arose and went unto the house of God to inquire of God. They said, which of us shall go up first to battle against the children of Benjamin? The Lord said, Judah first. So the children of Israel rose in the morning and encamped against Gibeah. And the men of Israel went out to battle against Benjamin. And the men of Israel put themselves in battle array to fight against them at Gibeah. Then the children of Benjamin came out of Gibeah, and on that day cut down to the ground 22,000 men of the Israelites. And the people, that is, the men of Israel, encouraged themselves and again formed the battle line at the place where they had put themselves in array on the first day. Then the children of Israel went up and wept before the Lord until evening, and asked counsel of the Lord, saying, shall I again draw near for battle against the children of my brother Benjamin? And the Lord said, go up against him. So the children of Israel approached the children of Benjamin on the second day. And Benjamin went out against them from Gibeah on the second day and cut down to the ground 18,000 more of the children of Israel. All these drew the sword. Then the children of Israel, that is, all the people, went up and came to the house of God and wept. They sat there before the Lord and fasted that day until evening. They offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before the Lord. So the children of Israel inquired of the Lord. The ark of the covenant of God was there in those days, and Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, stood before it in those days, saying, Shall I yet again go out to battle against the children of my brother Benjamin, or shall I cease? And the Lord said, Go up, for tomorrow I will deliver them into your hands. So what has happened there basically, they decided to go to war. The Bible says 400,000 Israelites. And there was 26,000 Benjamites. And before they went to war, they inquired of the Lord. And God gave them a word. God says, go up. Go and fight. Right? And what we read just now, so they went up, they fought the first day. The second day. Right? Okay, so I want to start extracting some principles before we read a few other verses. And the first thing I want to look at, or the first thing that stood out to me, and I mean, this is a very controversial kind of chapters, because there's so many things that could be extracted from this. I mean, there's so many principles that could be extracted, but we just want to focus on the aspect of how they remain unified. And the first thing that stood out to me was the fact that the Levite he was in a dilemma, but he didn't go on mute. He sounded an alarm, and while it wasn't a physical sound, he did something that it's like when you hear of the clarion call. A clarion call is in modern times they would use the medieval trumpet, and the trumpet was used to summons a gathering or a holy assembly. It was used to alert the Israelites of impending danger, or it was used to put emphasis on or urgency in the realm of the spirit. And so to me, while he did not make a song per se, he did something that symbolizes that there was urgency, there was an urgent matter in the realm of the spirit. And a lot of times, as believers, when we find ourselves in a crisis, sometimes we go on mute. And I think because for a lot of us, we've been injured or battered at the hands of people who did not handle us well or handle our information well, we have just learned to fight alone. And so it was really interesting to me. Here it is, there were 12 tribes. The Levites were the priestly tribes. They were like the elites. They were set apart for God. God told them, listen, he don't even want them going to war. They were set aside for God. Yet still, when he found himself in a dilemma, it wasn't a Levite's dilemma. It wasn't, this is my clan, or this is an issue with my clique. But the Bible said he called a general assembly of God's people. And I just want to emphasize that sometimes I think the Bible, the enemy likes to have us fight alone. And I am guilty of it sometimes. Because as I was telling Auntie Susan, when I have a situation, I don't think about who to call. I think about how I fix it. So it's not that I don't want to call people, but I sometimes find myself being guilty of that. But when we look at the word, a lot of great moves that happen in the Bible always happen when the people were together as one. One. Not divided. Not separated. It's like there could never be this unity or this harmony in a body. Anytime a body is not in sync or they're not unified, it ceases to be a body. It no longer exists as a body. It exists as a group of disjointed parts. And God don't want us in this season to function as disjointed members of a group. But God wants us to operate as a body. And for those of us who still struggle with going on mute, like myself, how I fixing this? I believe that in this season, and Pastor has said so many things on unity. I mean, we've been inundated with different ways to remain unified. And I think that God is really calling us to move from beyond a Levite fight or the tribe of Dan fight or Judah fight, but move to a place where it becomes our fight, where we remain resolute and committed to each other. Nobody returns to their home. If we see Robbie is under attack, we amalgamate ourselves and it becomes our fight. And it's not just for us to say it, because we could say it. And sometimes, to be honest, we could really find ourselves being busy. And sometimes you're too busy. Not that you don't care, but sometimes we're just busy. Like Martha, it was Martha. When God told her, listen, you're busy about many things, but it's not important. It's not important. What is important to God is our ability to remain unified and make this fight a fight of the Israelites. It has nothing to do with it. It's a high priest fight. I mean, these men were ready for war. You could imagine. I come and I say, listen, we have a problem. And everybody here tonight say, nobody going home. We don't care what happened in home. Nobody going home tonight. We would stay here and we would war until we recover by the sword. Isn't that amazing? I think it's amazing. And so the principle in that is depending on the ferocity or the brutality of the attack, we may require help outside of our tribe. And we have to know when to sound an alarm. You wouldn't sound an alarm for everything. But you have to know when to sound an alarm. And don't be limited by experiences. But let us be able to lean on each other. Right? The ferocity or the brutality of the attack may require help outside of your tribe. And you know, the thing about it is, I don't think there's anybody in this room, it doesn't matter how high you are or how low you are, it doesn't matter our status, our educational background, how sophisticated we are. There's nobody that will ever be exempted from affliction. It's as if I am to ask how many people in this room facing something or under some sort of an affliction. I'm sure 3/4 of the people would put their hands up. So then you ask yourself, why is it that we are so afraid to shout for help? Why are we afraid to cry out help? Sometimes even outside of our tribe. Because a lot of times, I don't know if you could identify with that, but to me, sometimes your greatest help comes sometimes from those outside of the tribe. And when I'm talking about tribe, I'm talking about in our little circles, in our little cliques. You know, it might just be me, Lisa, and Leslie, and everything I call in Lisa and Leslie. But sometimes, and that is good. Nothing is wrong with that. I'm not knocking that, because that has its place. Because even Jesus had his inner circle. So nothing is wrong with that. But we just ought to know when to intensify the warfare depending on how brutal the attack is. The second principle for me was the fact that these men were ready for war. Nobody had to go back and get a cutlass or a knife. I mean, they were ready for war. And we as believers, when we sign up or we enlist into Christianity, Christianity is not, or the Bible is not about religion. It's about a king and a kingdom. And we enlist as soldiers. You know, I heard a saying recently. It says, a Christian without affliction is like a soldier on parade. The guy who said it, I think is a guy by the name of Felix Neff or something like that. So in other words, we enlist into the kingdom. We are soldiers. Soldiers are sometimes victims of casualties. Soldiers do get wounded from time to time. But these men were ready to fight. You know, it's not a matter of everything is good with me, so I could relax. But they were ready to fight. Even when the fight was not directly affecting their homes, they were ready to fight. It wasn't a matter of, I mean, as a soldier, they really can't choose who you would fight for. A true soldier, that is. If you enlist to represent, you sign up in the army of Trinidad and Tobago, you have to fight for everybody in Trinidad and Tobago. A soldier don't decide, well, I will pray for Misty, but I can't pray for, you see Deborah? She not in my, she not on my listing. She down here. No, a soldier doesn't have an option. A soldier is enlisted to fight. If you don't fight, they have something they call what it is, desertion. Desertion. It means you abandon your position without permission. You defect. You AWOL. Right? So in other words, as soldiers in God's army, we don't decide who we fight for. We don't get to choose who we go to war for. If you're a true soldier, once the smoke signal goes up, you're ready for war. We all gaze up. When the alarm song, ain't nobody saying, before I put my clothes, who we fighting for? And at the end of the day, we have to fight. It's a fight. Fighting increases the possibility of survival. And if we don't fight, we'll die. Paul says, I fight. It's a fight. And listen, it doesn't mean that the fight easy. No. But we ought to continue to fight. Be ready to fight in season, out of season, your good season, not good season, up season, down season. We ought to be ready to fight. The next principle was don't tap out. And when I thought about this point, I thought about a wrestler engaged in combat, and sometimes because of the intensity of the hole, he gives up. And this point tied into me with the Israelites. So here it is, and I'm sure there are many of us at this position now. So we got a word from God, because they consulted God, they sought God. Said, God, should we? God says, yes, fight. But they were fighting, but they experienced major defeat. How many of us at that point now? We have the word in one hand. We're standing on the word, but you look at your life in the next hand, you say, Lord, this thing not adding up. You know, I thought about it as, could you imagine pastor is saying, so we under attack. Nobody going home. God say we should go up against the enemy. We shall fight. So everybody obey. We come out, we fight. When we look around, ushers limping. Trainees, men in training. Hand in sling. Bodies. I am sure there are people that would say, Pastor, show you here? No, this thing ain't making sense. But when you continue reading, it says that they wept before the Lord. It's okay to weep. They wept before the Lord. The Bible said they cried. And if you picture this thing literally, we're fighting. We have dead bodies. 22,000 men died on the first day. when they went out to war. But the Bible says they wept. They encouraged themselves in the Lord. And they reformed the battle line. Could you imagine? But in the midst of all of that, they encouraged themselves. And I remembered Robbie's song. It's like, when he talk about the tether, it's like, I am standing. Okay, let me stay here. So I am standing here. I am exhausted. I've just experienced a whole day of turmoil, defeat. But here it is. I have almost, say about 10 brothers or sisters. So I'm here, I'm ready to fight. We're going again. This is the second day, right? I look to my left. And Trisha is there. She's sharpening her sword. You look to the right. Siobhan is there, pumping her fists. We could do this. We could do this. Doesn't that do something to you? It does something to you. It brings out the last bit of fight on the inside of you. And that's why we're really supposed to remain unified in a crisis. Because when you're fighting alone, you could imagine a big devil like Big J coming against me. I had a whole day staggering loss. So it means that I'm a bit battered, I'm a bit worn out, but I'm fighting alone. I look to the left, there's nobody. I look to the right, and there's nobody. But if I could song an alarm and say, help! So, and there's also a flip to that, because sometimes we fight alone and we cry before God and we say, God, I have nobody. It's me alone. But it will always be you alone if you don't song an alarm. Because we can't read minds. And unless the Holy Spirit does not give us the ability to discern, we'll never know what's happening. So at the end of the day, it's either you song an alarm for help, or we stand and we fight alone. But in the midst of it, we want to adopt the posture of the Israelites. That even though they were experiencing defeat, they got the word from God. They got the okay, fight. And many of us may be at that place now. We're fighting. We're standing on a word, on a promise. God, you said 1,000 here, 10,000 here. It didn't come in here, but it here. But do we give up? Do we tap out? Do we give in? Or do we continue to encourage ourselves in God? We weep, we moan, we are sad, we are disappointed, but we never allow those feelings to take root on the inside of us. We got to know when to weep, and we got to know when to shake it off. We weep, we shake it off. And we encourage ourselves in God, and we continue to fight. So whatever your fight may be tonight, whatever word you standing on, you continue to see defeat. You're wondering, God, are you here? I just can't trace you, Lord. Because I'm sure at some point in time it would have crossed their mind. Has God deserted us? Has God deserted us? Even though when you get down to the crux of the text, God allowed the defeat because of their heart position. And God deliberately allowed the defeat. So even though God gave them the word, and that's another fascinating point, because God will give me a word and tell me, go on, then they can leave me here, Lord. It's like, seriously. But because of their heart position and they depending on the strength of the army and not solely on God. And remember, they were also in a state of degeneracy. So there was a lot of sin and distasteful stuff happening. And so God permitted the defeat. And so the second day came, and another 1,000 defeat. That's 2 days in a row. And so they sought the Lord, yet they were defeated. It was a staggering defeat, severe loss in the first battle, 22,000 Israelites on the battlefield that day. They wept before the Lord because of the loss, but they encouraged themselves and again formed the battle line. And this was a wonderful reaction because they didn't lose hope. They didn't stop seeking the Lord after the first disaster in battle. But the Bible said they humbled themselves before God and sought Him regarding the next battle. So it wasn't a matter of, but God, how you do that yesterday? They were eager concerning what was coming next. That's also amazing to me. And I guess because they understood that, and it's something for us too, that we understand that our life is not on autopilot. God has written the script concerning us. Even when we toss and we turn, and even when things not working out favorable for us, God is still holding the wheel. He's still in charge. He is still God. He hasn't stepped down from his throne. He is still God. He continues to be God, even when we are victorious, and even when it appears as if we are losing ground. And the last principle is, don't be blinded or paralyzed by external occurrences. Because a lot of times, what I have realized for me is that every time God releases a word, it's like the word over the house this year is recovery. And to me, it's like every time God releases a word, it's as if a demon is manifested. And he's, can you use you, Robbie? I can use you? Come now. I want to use you, Anita. So Anita is the word, right? So the word has been released. Robbie, you could just go closer to your chair. Closer to your chair? Right. So the word has been released over the house this year. It's the year of recovery. And to me, it's as if as soon as the word is released, and we saw it with Daniel, when Daniel prayed. Yes? And the demon is manifested. And how is he manifested? In natural occurrences. So all of a sudden, I am here. I am heading towards my word from God that I'm about to recover. And immediately, natural occurrences, house, car, this, that. And every time I try to get to that word, I'm being prohibited. I try to get to the word. You have to follow me. Every time I get closer to the word, this thing gets bigger. The manifestation of this thing gets bigger. And at the end of the day, this is designed to get me to be so weary and worn out that I abort the promise. And I abort the word of God. The word is recovery. It doesn't matter what is manifested here now at this point in time. We got to not allow external occurrences to allow us to remain paralyzed internally. We got to keep reaching for that word. Reach. So I'm reaching for my word. I'm reaching for my word. I'm reaching for my word. Reaching for the word. Thank you. And so the instruction has already been released, or the word has already been released by God. when you continue reading in Judges 20, you'll see that after the first day, defeat, the second day, defeat. The third day was the only day that God said, go up and fight. And today, I will deliver them into your hands. No other day did God mention anything about victory. All God said, fight. Fight. Where are you now? Are you at the point of the second day? Or are you still in the first day? Or are you at that point when God is saying, go up? Today, I will deliver them into your hands. And what was ironic? They said in the third day, so they formed the battle line and they were all ready to go again. And the Benjamites killed 30 of the Israelites. And they started to rejoice. They said, yes, we will defeat them again, as we did the first day. As we destroy them the second day, we'll do it again today. And the enemy is saying that concerning us right now. He said, listen, I had Marlene. I deal with her last week. She fighting. Oh, she come back. I deal with her in December. Oh, she come back. We will deal with her again. But the enemy does not know that God has an appointed day when he shall be delivered into our hands. But the thing is to continue to fight. Continue to fight. As soldiers, we don't go AWOL. We remain united. Everything that happened in these few chapters happened not because of the strength of one man, but because a company remained amalgamated. They held hands and they did not let go. So let's continue to fight. The thing about unity is, as I close, and I encourage you to go and read these few chapters. It's really, really important, in my opinion. The thing about unity is we don't have to all be alike. We don't have to, it has nothing to do with us resembling. But it's about us understanding that we are different and we respect our differences and we are ready to work together. We understand that the eyes need the hands need the feet, and we even honoring the hidden parts. Because you don't see the heart, you don't see the liver, you don't see the pancreas, but we can't live without them. Yes? And we continue to remain unified, irregardless to what part of the body we holding on to. We're not going to become a dismembered group, but we want to remain a body. And remember tonight, a body could never be in this harmony with itself. So as we continue to journey and as Pastor continues to put emphasis on unity, we are a unified company, not a dismembered group. Right? So that's it for tonight. Thank you to our online viewers. We are glad to have you. Hope you were blessed. Good night.